Hello friends, my name's Maddie and welcome to my YouTube channel. So this is going to be my mid-year freakout tag. I can't believe it's July already. The year has completely flown by. This year I've had a really great reading year so far. I have done a ton of rereads, so it's been really nice to touch back to some of my favorite books of all time and be able to reread them, experience them again, and so it's been really great. So let's go ahead and get started. First question is the best book you've read so far in 2023. So far, I think the best romance book I've read so far is Play With Me by Becca Mack. It is a hockey romance. It is a brother's best friend romance, and it is hysterical. It had me laughing out loud. I had a great time reading it. It was so fun. Another one of my favorite books that I've read this year is Iron Widow by Iran J. Zhao. To me, this book reads like an anime, and I'm so excited for the sequel, which comes out in January 2024. I was devastated when I finished this book, and it ends on such a great note, and I was so disappointed when I found out I had to wait an entire year, because this is one of the first books I read in 2023. But it's such a fantastic read. It is YA, based off of the first female emperor, or the only female emperor in China, I believe, but it is so fantastic and I highly recommend it too. Of course, I can't go without talking about the lovely R.F. Kuang. This is Babel, and it is a thick book. This came out in 2022, and I held off reading it because it's dark academia, and I knew nothing about it besides the fact it is a dark academia book. And it is so thick, and it terrified me, but this book is so beautifully written. It is so well researched, and it is absolutely phenomenal. If you were going to read any book ever, it would be this one, because Rebecca R.F. Kuang is just such a genius with her writing, and her writing is so intentional. And every word she has just has an impact, and by far she is going to be, I believe, one of the greatest writers of my generation. It wouldn't surprise me if this book eventually goes on to become a classic later on in life, but absolutely just a phenomenal read. So hands down, this might be the best book I've read in 2023 as well, so we'll see. Alright, so the next question is the best sequels you have read so far in 2023. So the first book I have is God's Grave by J. Kristoff. This is the second book. So it's God's Grave and Dark Dawn, which is the second and third book in the Nevernight trilogy. The series was a breath of fresh air for me. I don't know what about it. And at first his writing style was really, really weird to me. And I went back and I reread Nevernight. Still, it was like 3.5, 4 stars for me, but God's Grave and Dark Dawn, they just did it for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I just adjusted to his writing style, but it's so different, and I had such a great time reading this series, and I loved it. So the next book I have is From the Grave by Kresley Cole. It is her final installment in the Arcana Chronicle series. I do have a little bit of mixed feelings about the end of it, but it was just so worth it. And I reread the entire series this year as well for this lead up of this ending, and I loved it. I loved seeing all the characters again. So because of that, even though I know I have a little bit of conflicted feelings about the end, to me it was still just such a fantastic read, such a great series. The last book I have for sequels that I really enjoyed this year in 2023 so far is The Long Way Home by Magnolia Parks. This book destroyed me in the best way possible. This book was so unexpected. I really liked Magnolia Parks, and then I really enjoyed the second book, Daisy Hates, but this book wrecked me. Oh my god, the ending of this, I need Magnolia Parks 3 ASAP. I needed it yesterday. I needed it months ago when I finished this book, but and I loved it. It is probably one of my favorite books I've read this year too. Just the cliffhanger on here, okay? Alright, fine, sue me. Next question is new releases you haven't read yet but want to read. Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I don't know if I will get to that one by the end of the year. I am still working my way through Mistborn. I haven't even picked up the second trilogy in Mistborn, so we'll see what happens. But the cover is absolutely beautiful, and I want to own this book so bad. Then lastly, I have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Again, this was a book that I'm just really putting off. I don't want to not have a book to read from her, so it's just just kind of stay on my TBR. So maybe when her next book comes out, whatever that may be, I'll get around to reading this, and then that book will be replaced on my TBR. And that is followed up with the question of most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. I have a ton. Oh my goodness. So we have Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab, which is the sequel series to one of my favorite series of all time, Darker Shades of Magic. So I'm so excited. She keeps posting snippets on Instagram about the book, and I'm just so excited. I'm so excited to see all my favorite characters again, and that is one book, that is one series I did reread this year, and I love it so much. Then I also have A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. That is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I think it's only a trilogy, but I'm so excited for that. That is a YA fantasy, and it's very almost quirky and magical and fantastical. It's a good time. It's fun. And then I have Defiant by Brandon Sanderson, which is his YA sci-fi series. Again, I think that is the fourth and final book, I believe. Also, we have Unlucky Like Us by Krista and Becca Ritchie. That is the, I don't even know at this point. That is the 11th or 12th book in the Like Us series. Of all the authors, I think Krista and Becky Ritchie might be my two most read authors of all time. It got a long series, but I'm very excited for those releases. I'm sure there's 10 million more that I can't even think of right now. Next question is the biggest disappointment. I have two. Ooh, and I might get some hate from, no, I'm gonna get hate for both of them. The first one is Powerless by Elsie Silver. So that is part of her small town romance series. So I'm a bit of hit or miss with her books. I gave her first book, Flawless, 3 stars. I gave Heartless 4 stars. That is probably, of the books I've read of hers, that one's probably my favorite. Powerless, I gave 3 stars too. For me, I feel like there was too much going on and nothing going on at all, if that makes any sense at all. It's supposed to be a small town romance. To me, it kind of just missed that element. It is also Friends to Lover, and again, that element just kind of, it's a hit or a miss for me, and unfortunately this one was a miss. I did give it 3 stars though, so is it really a miss? Who knows? I will pick up Reckless eventually at some point. The next book that disappointed me was Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Ooh, that one hurt some people, I bet. Ooh, sorry. I'm just not a fan of the Alex Stern series. I read Ninth House twice. I can't get into it. I don't know what it is. It's me and that dark academia, but there's something missing, which is funny because I love Leigh Bardugo and I love Six of Crows and King of Scars and the Grisha verse. I absolutely adore. But I don't know what it is about this series. I just can't get into it. I did power through it. I think I gave it like 2 stars. Whenever the third one comes out, I'm not picking it up, so sorry. The biggest surprise. What is the biggest surprise of 2023? And that was Blood Orange by Karina Halley. This book wrecked me. So this book is a vampire romance. He is basically destined to fall in love with the same person over and over again as they die, get reincarnated, yada yada. So obviously the female main character comes back to life. This was really big like 2 years ago, and I was just kind of like, whatever. I read something else by this author, and I wasn't a super big fan, but this was kind of always on my radar because I enjoy vampire romances, so. This book rocked me. Oh my goodness, this is like the best vampire romance I've read in a long time. This got me out of a reading slump, and this is the best romance I had read in a long time when I picked it up. So it was so worth it for me. It was just different, and I enjoyed it. I love the characters in it. It is a duology too, so it does end on a cliffhanger. Next question is favorite new author. New author to me is Bella Roth. She has written the Blood Grace series. I'm on the 4th book now, I think, but absolutely phenomenal. Again, it is a vampire romance. Are we surprised? No, we're not. It has very classical fantasy style elements, so it is a fantasy romance novel. I adore the main characters so much. Such a great read. Next up, you have Jay Kristoff, Nevernight series. I can't say enough fantastic things about his writing and his novels. So then you have Katerina Mora. She wrote the Windsor series. She's in the process of writing the Windsor series. She just came out with The Unwanted Bride, but I started reading the rest of the series this year, and then I started reading her other series, one of her other series as well, in anticipation for the release of The Unwanted Bride, or The Unwanted Marriage, which I absolutely devoured so fast. I read it in like 2 days, and it was really great. So she is definitely one of my now staple romance writers. Well, I've read like 7 books by her so far. I'm a wee bit obsessed. The next question is newest fictional crush. The first one is going to be BJ Valentine from Magnolia Parks. Do I really want him as my boyfriend? No. But do I love him anyways? Yes, I do. Sadly. He's a hot mess express, but I adore him. And I think I just really love the way he loves Magnolia, even though they do things that are so wrong for one another, but it is still so great and I adore them. So what can I say? My other fictional crush is Leo from Blood Grace. Leo is a bit more scholarly than you would expect in a fantasy romance. Half the time they're like Castile from Blood and Ash, or like Rhysand from McIntyre, copied and pasted a little bit. But he's like this breath of fresh air for me. So he reminds me like a little bit of Dorian from Throne of Glass, like just like the smallest bit. He is just very cinnamon roll almost in a way, and I think he's great and I adore him, and I'm so excited to keep reading. And I love that he gives Cassia options, which is one of my, like, I don't know, I just think it's really sweet, and I think them together is very sweet. Newest favorite fictional characters, that'll be the boys, just the entire cast for the most part of the Boys of Tommen from Binding 13. I've put off the 3rd and 4th books just because I don't want this series. I don't want to end this series quite yet. But they are just absolutely fantastic and very found family, and I love them so much, all of them. There's just so much that happens in these books, and the way they support each other and are there for each other, I think is just very admirable, and they look out for one another, and that's just kind of how it is. My next few favorite fictional characters are the entirety of the Cal family from Jade City. I have also put off reading the last book in this series simply because I don't want it to end. I only have like 400 pages left, and I have not read it in like 3 days because I simply do not want to say goodbye to these characters. Do they always make the greatest choices? No. But I think that's why I love them so much, is because they're all slightly morally gray and they're willing to go to different extremes for their family. I love these characters so much, and it is just such a fantastic read, and it is so worth it just for the characters as well. Alright, next question is a book that made you cry. I have 2 of them, even though that should be a very long list. First one is Before Us by Jewel E. Ann. I cried reading that book twice. It's about this young woman who is living out of her car. Becomes a housekeeper for a husband and wife. The wife is sick, and it's not a spoiler alert that she dies. I cried twice, and both times I cried in were really awkward spots in South Korea. I cried in a taxi, and then I cried in the train. I should have seen it coming. I knew what this book was about, and I was like, I'll be fine, I read books like this all the time. No, I was not okay. I probably looked crazy too because I was in a foreign country that I didn't speak the language. And then the second book that made me cry was Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. Theft of Swords is a fantasy series. Starts off as a heist. They meet this monk, and I cried over it. I could cry about it. I could cry right now just thinking about it. They're into this monk named Myron. His temple is burnt down, and all the monks unfortunately died. Before that had happened, the monks had a sick like 12-year-old come to them. He passed away, and they buried him under this tree. And Myron was having to leave because, you know, his temple was destroyed. And he's like, how do I say goodbye? How do I tell him everyone's gone and that, like, I'm not gonna be here anymore? I stopped. Like, I had to stop reading because I was crying over this, like, how do I say goodbye? But it was a really good read, so. And that only happens in, like, the first 150 pages. All right, the next question is the most beautiful books you've bought so far this year. I have two, go figure, because I can't answer this question for one. The first one is Blood Solace by Bella Roth. This is the second book in the Blood Grace series, and look how beautiful this cover is. Like, oh my gosh, see? Like, this is hands down the most beautiful book I think I own, period, end of story. And then the next book I have that I think is absolutely beautiful is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I don't know what about this book that does it for me, but again, just beautiful, very, I don't know what it is, but I just find it so beautiful. This is also a really great book. This book almost made me cry. I had to stop reading this when I got to the NPC chapter because I knew I was going to cry, and I did not want to cry at that time because I was doing something or I had something to do, and I was like, I'm not doing that to myself. I'm not doing it today. I didn't cry reading it because I knew what was going to happen, but I almost did. So this is like kind of quasi counts for the books that made me cry. This is like 0.5 points. All right, cool. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? I have a ton. Ooh. Okay, I have Carissa Broadbent, who wrote the Daughter of No World series. There's a few books on my TBR by her. See if I get to those. I have Realm Breaker by Victoria Aviar, which I'm going to try to read because the third book is also coming out very soon, and I believe it's the final book as well. I have Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. Again, the third book is coming out very soon, so hopefully I can get through 1 and 2 pretty fast. And then I have The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which is a very long series. It is comprised of like 4 or 5 different trilogies. I own the first trilogy, I just haven't gotten around to it because it is a little bit daunting. I'm still trying to work my way through Game of Thrones right now. I will probably dive into Assassin's Apprentice whenever I finally get a chance. And so that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you like this, please feel free to like and subscribe and follow me on my reading journey throughout the rest of the year. And I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.